It is January in the year 897. A dead man is sitting on a throne in Rome, and this dead man is a pope. He has been rotting in his grave for months, and right now he is standing trial. Well, sitting trial. Someone dug up his corpse. They dressed the rotten body in golden papal robes. They propped it up on a throne like a puppet, and a young priest crouches behind the chair, ready to speak for the dead. Because someone is about to interrogate this corpse, out loud, in front of a room full of bishops. Now stop and picture that for a second. A living pope pointing at a rotting body and screaming questions at it, waiting for the dead man to answer. This is one of the strangest scenes in the entire history of the church. And the man running this circus, he gets exactly what he deserves, but not in the way you would ever guess. So, how on earth did we get here? Let me take you back a few years. To understand this, you need one thing about that time. Being pope was not just a holy job. It was one of the most powerful political seats in all of Europe. The pope crowned emperors. And whoever the pope crowned, won. This was not really about prayer. It was about who got to rule the world. So every powerful family in Italy wanted their guy on that throne, because their guy meant their crown. The two biggest players were a warlord family from a place called Spoleto. Say it like Spoleto. And on the other side, a foreign king named Arnulf from north of the Alps. Both of them wanted the imperial crown, and they were willing to spill a lot of blood to get it. And in the middle stood our dead man. His name was Formosus. Say it like Formosus. And Formosus was not some quiet, holy man. He was a sharp, ambitious diplomat, the kind of man who made enemies his whole life. He had spent years as a traveling envoy for the church, sent to foreign courts, cutting deals, making promises. Long before he ever became pope, another pope had thrown him out of the church. He was accused of being too hungry for power, and he was banned from ever setting foot in Rome again. Think about that. Kicked out, disgraced, told never to come back. And somehow, he clawed his way back anyway. Not just into the city, all the way to the top. That same disgraced man got himself elected pope, elected by the very city that once banished him. Life has a sense of humor like that. So he arrived with a long list of people who already hated him. Now, here is where Formosus made his fatal mistake. He could not pick a side and stick with it. First, he crowned the Spoleto family's man as emperor. Then he turned around and betrayed them. He secretly invited the foreign king to march into Italy instead. And he crowned that king emperor too. Imagine promising the throne to one family, then handing it to their worst enemy. That is exactly what he did. In a world this violent, that was a death sentence. He just did not live long enough to pay for it. A few weeks later, Formosus died, an old man in his own bed. He thought that was the end of his story. He was very wrong, because the Spoleto family clawed their way back into power in Rome, and they wanted revenge, not just on the living, on the dead. So they put one of their own loyal men on the papal throne, a pope named Stephen. And Stephen had one job: erase Formosus from history. Now, most people would just tear down a statue, maybe scratch a name off a wall. Stephen went a little further. He ordered his dead enemy dug out of the ground, a body that had been rotting for 9 months. Just picture the smell in that room. Then they carried the corpse into the great church, and the trial began. They read out the charges against the dead man. There were 3 of them. The main one sounds almost boring. They said Formosus had broken church law, that he had jumped from one bishop's seat to a bigger one, against the rules. The other 2 were bolder. They claimed he had lied under oath, and that he was never really qualified to be a bishop at all. Basically, that he had cheated his whole way to the top. And here is the truly insane part. Every time a charge was read, Stephen turned to the body, and he screamed at it. He demanded that the corpse defend itself, out loud. So that terrified young priest behind the throne had a job. He had to mumble the answers in a tiny voice, pretending to be a dead pope begging for his life. Can you imagine being handed that job? Of course, the verdict was never in doubt: guilty, on every single count. But here is the part that actually mattered. They declared that everything Formosus ever did as pope was now fake. Every priest he had ordained, every blessing he had ever given, all of it, canceled. And that was not just an insult to a dead man. That was a legal earthquake, and we will come back to why. But first, they were not done with the body. They stripped the golden robes off the corpse. Then they took a blade to his right hand, and they hacked off 3 fingers. Why those 3? Because those are the fingers a pope uses to give a blessing. It was a message. You will never bless anyone again. Then they dumped the body in a graveyard for strangers. But even that felt too kind. So they dug it up one more time, they tied heavy weights to it, and they threw it into the Tiber River. Problem solved, right? Well, the river had other plans, because the body did not stay down. A fisherman is said to have pulled the corpse back out of the water, and then something strange started to spread through the city. People began whispering that the dead pope was working miracles, that his rotten body was somehow holy. One story even claimed the church statues bowed as it passed, almost certainly invented. But in a frightened city, a good story spreads fast. Now, was any of that true? Almost certainly not. But it did not matter, because the mood in Rome had already turned. The people were disgusted by what Stephen had done. Turns out you cannot put a corpse on trial and win the crowd. And that disgust boiled over into a full-blown riot. The mob turned on Stephen. They tore him off his throne. They threw him into a prison cell. And there, in the dark, the pope who tortured a dead body was strangled to death, just a few short months after his little trial. Think about that timing for a second. He desecrated a corpse in January, and by the end of that same year, he was the one in a grave. So justice in a way was served, but the story does not end cleanly, because now Rome had a real mess on its hands. Remember that legal earthquake I mentioned? Here it is. If every priest for Moses ordained was suddenly fake, then every blessing they gave was fake too, and the priests they had blessed. It was a chain reaction, one that could unravel half the church. Real men with real jobs suddenly told they were nobody. Scholars wrote entire books arguing about it. Was a blessing still real if a dead court said no? So, the next popes had to step in and clean up the wreckage. One of them threw out the whole trial. He declared Formosus innocent again. They fished what was left of the body out of the river one more time, and they buried him with full honors. Another pope made a brand new rule, just to be safe. No more putting dead people on trial. You would think that would finally settle it. It did not. Popes were coming and going at a dizzying pace back then. One before Stephen had lasted barely a few days. Because a few years later, yet another pope came along. And this one had actually been a judge at the original circus. And he flipped it all back. He declared Formosus guilty all over again. So, depending on which year you asked, this one dead man was either a criminal or a saint. Judged, cleared, and then condemned again. All while lying quietly in his grave. And here is the last twist, the one the legends love. For centuries, people told an even darker version. They said the corpse was dug up a 3rd time, beheaded, and thrown back into the river. It is a great story. There is just one problem. It probably never happened. Historians think an old writer simply mixed up 2 different popes. So, the truth was already insane enough. The legend just could not resist making it worse. And that is the real lesson hiding in all of this. It is easy to look back and call this the work of one crazy pope. But it was not madness. It was cold, calculated politics. It was a powerful family using a dead body as a weapon to destroy their enemy's legacy. They just picked the most grotesque tool imaginable. So, the next time you think modern politics has hit rock bottom, remember this. Over 1,000 years ago, a pope dug up his rival. He dressed the corpse in gold, and he put it on trial. And people still argued about who really won. If this buried piece of history creeped you out in the best way, tell me down in the comments, and let me know which forgotten, bizarre story you want me to dig up next.